Regular viewers of my channel may wonder why I haven't spoken about the latest Brexit news, particularly Boris Johnson's proroguing of Parliament. Um, the truth is, I don't like talking about Brexit, but I try to make this channel topical, and there are some things around this that I do want to mention, and I particularly want to address other European viewers. And I say other European because I consider myself European. And to any Brexiteers watching this, if that bothers you, let me just put this to you. In the beginning of the Brexit thing, there was always this insistence from many Leave people, oh, well, it's not about Europe, it's about the EU. Some British people still get offended if you even talk about European. You know, they really do see themselves as totally separate. I have a big problem with that because I think it's just ignorant of history. The simple fact of the matter is that whilst we are a proud island nation and we have a very distinctive identity, you cannot write the history of Britain totally separate from continental Europe. You just can't. I mean, this is kind of an obvious thing to state, but where do people think the Romans came from? Where do they think the Saxons and the Jutes and the Normans and the Plantagenets came from? That's why it really bugs me when some of my fellow Britons talk about you Europeans like it's a whole other thing. So I insist that if they're going to talk about grievances with the EU, which I can understand, then they separate that from Europe, the continent, and Europeans. But I also want to say something to um, some of the continental Europeans who may be watching this. I have seen a growing sense of frustration with the British. Now, I love my country and my loyalties are to the United Kingdom. And I find it very, very sad that in an era when we are facing an assertive Russia and assertive China, a belligerent Russia and a belligerent China, that the situation in this country is such that we are having a real test in relations with countries that really are our closest trading partners: the Republic of Ireland, the Netherlands, France, Germany. You know, I think there are Brexiteers that genuinely feel animosity towards the government of those countries, and and I think unfortunately Britain is starting to be. I do think Brexit has severely damaged our image. I do feel that there has been a growing sense of impatience with the British, kind of like, oh well, why don't they just get it over and done with? And many Brexiteers would agree with that. They would say we should have left by now. I hate I hate this situation. I hate the situation this country is in. I hate the uncertainty of it all. It depresses the hell out of me. And I genuinely do understand the frustration of Brexiteers. But I also feel frustrated when people are so quick to just, particularly some newspapers that have a position of responsibility, when they casually talk about Ramona's this, Ramona's that. And yes, it works both ways. I get that. I think I've been very fair in terms of how I've spoken about people I disagree with on this. In terms of, I've never ever generalized 17 million people. I've never said all Leavers are this, all Brexiteers are this. So I I don't accept any sort of abuse of me as someone who voted Remain. I'm not calling for another referendum. In fact, I don't think another referendum would necessarily help. I think what 2014 and 2016 have shown us is that referendums, by definition, are deeply divisive. But a French friend of mine, I haven't really been in touch with her for a long time, but she posted something that was one of these like answer the question type things, and the question was, should Scotland have another independence referendum? And she said, if I was in Scotland, I would want one just to stay in the European Union. Now, that doesn't make sense to me. Why leave one union just to stay in another? Why leave a 300-year-old union, which the Prime Minister rightly says is the most successful of modern times, to to stay in another that we've been in for 46 years? I don't like Brexit. I think my gut feeling is it's a big mistake, but this is the path we're on, and I just don't see it. I don't think overturning it at this point would be helpful. I think the Prime Minister has a lot to answer for in terms of his cavalier flip flopping on issues like no deal, for example. One day saying it's a 1 in a million chance of it happening, now saying it's touch and go. I mean, this is the country's future we're talking about. But what I want to also address is that this, like I say, there's a growing impatience across the rest of Europe. Number one, to anyone in Poland or Portugal or France or the Czech Republic or Italy or any other European country that sort of looks at the British as being small minded or nationalistic or whatever, if that is your view about the British, um, you're generalizing a country of 66 million people. 16 million people in this country voted to stay within the European Union, and we lost. That was the minority. The Leave side won. I accept that. But if you have negative views about the British because of Brexit, that's a bit like saying you don't like Americans because of gun violence, or you don't like the Spanish because of bullfighting, or whatever. So I'm not saying, by the way, that's the case. I know many other Europeans are open minded. They know the British aren't like that, particularly if they live in London. They will know that because of the animosity towards Brexit in London. And I imagine in other big cities, in Birmingham and Leeds, um, in Edinburgh, in Belfast. So I feel very unhappy about this growing sense of distance between us and our nearest neighbours. I mean, I'm pleased the Prime Minister uses diplomatic language, at least he has since he's become Prime Minister, of our friends in France and Germany and so on. That's important. It may seem like a mute point. I think it's important. And I give him credit for that. Because Brexiteers have a responsibility. I mean, politician Brexiteers have a responsibility to remind people in this country and to remind their neighbours that they're not the enemy. This is a difficult time, but these are our closest partners. We're not talking about hostile foreign governments here. These are countries with shared values. These are Western NATO powers, you know, and it's irrefutable that there are tensions over Brexit. Irrefutable. But I would also say that Angela Merkel and Emmanuel Macron need to respect British sovereignty. They need to respect the fact we are a sovereign country, as they are. I would also say to some Euro zealots, what I mean by that is people who hold animosity towards the UK because we don't endorse the European Union. Um, if you're French, are you honestly going to tell me you want a European superstate where French sovereignty, where French national identity was kind of subsided? I believe national identity is important, and I don't believe it's jingoistic or ultra nationalistic to have that position. I think national identities matter. And until certain Europhiles get it into their head that there is never going to be an EU superstate, then Brexit won't be the end of it. I do think we should work very, very closely with our nearest. I mean, when Trump came, there was a lot of attention here with the special relationship with America. We do have a special relationship with America, which I value, but that doesn't mean that it's our only ally. And it doesn't mean that the Commonwealth nations are our only allies either. I believe we should have very close relations with our nearest physical neighbours. It just seems a given to me. I mean, we can value all those other relations as well. We must, particularly the Commonwealth states. But it just seems crazy in an uncertain and dangerous world that we wouldn't want to resolve this. And many Brexiteers do, to be fair. Many people in within the EU do. But this is unquestionably a difficult time. I've seen people, EU nationals who have lived in this country for decades, are growing increasingly anxious. I totally understand their feelings. I mean, people who've been here for years are being asked by the Home Office, for example, to prove that they've been here for 5 years or longer. Now, technically, that's just, you know, going by the book. But if they go about that in any way, like, the way the Department of Work and Pensions treats claimants, like treating people with doubt, treating people like they've done something wrong, it's just going to increase anxiety. Whatever Brexiteers say, if people are being made to feel like they're not welcome. Um, I mean, there's a Portuguese woman on Sky News the other night broke down in tears. And it might be that she's exaggerating. Some Brexiteers were even suggesting that she was an actress. I mean, really, it might be that the fear is overblown. But if people who've been here for decades are being made to feel like they're being put under the microscope, then I can understand them being frustrated and anxious. And the Home Office needs to do this in a very professional and um, sensitive way, if at all. To me, the common sense should apply. Um, so I'm just going to close this video with a few thoughts. I'm not going to get into details about the proroguing of Parliament or anything like that. I will say this, I think it's a little bit, I think the Remain side is somewhat exaggerating this. I don't like it, and I don't think Johnson should have done it, but I don't think it's quite as bad as it's being made out. I don't think it's a coup, and I don't think Johnson's a dictator. I mean, I think that's borderline silliness. But it is an unusual thing, and it's right that people are asking questions about it. Um, I did see an article which was a fair point, and it was this. It's kind of ironic that Johnson's being accused of staging a coup and being unconstitutional when, in a sense, he's using one of the oldest aspects of the British Constitution. We don't have a written constitution, but proroguing of Parliament isn't a new thing. It's been done before. Um, I'll just close with this. I am British, but I see myself as European, culturally European as well. I do feel that we're a unique nation. I do. But if you're going to divorce European culture from British culture completely, you're ignorant of history. And I do feel that some Brits have a very ignorant mentality about this. It's not jingoistic, it's not racist, but it's ignorant. If are if you really hate the EU, I can understand that. But if you're going to say, "Oh, those Europeans," just look at for if you're so patriotic, then look at our history. I must admit that makes me angry. And it should anyone with any notion of history. I mean, what bugs me is some of these Leave leaders, they're educated people, they're not stupid. Someone like Jacob Rees-Mogg, he knows his history, you know. Um, and so this animosity that they're showing, this cavalier attitude. I mean, that's what bugs me about the Leave side. The cavalier attitude to the whole thing. Oh, it'll all be fine. And anything we don't want to hear must be Project Fear. That's a go-to every single time. I mean, a doctor was talking about the risks of no deal in terms of his business, his field, how it could potentially shortage of drugs could lead to severe problems in the NHS. Um, Jacob Rees-Mogg accused him of scaremongering. Well, I'm going to believe a doctor over Jacob Rees-Mogg when it comes to anything related with health. And that's the sort of cavalier attitude I dislike greatly about the Leave leaders. I think they have this attitude of everything will be fine, nothing to worry about, and anyone who says otherwise is just scaremongering. Well, we'll see. We will see. I hope they're right. But I tell you something, if we get into a no deal and this country slips into recession and there are serious problems connected with it, well, they better not turn around and blame the Remain side. And so, fellow Europeans watching this, please don't judge us all as one and the same. And don't judge all Leave people either. You know, they're not racist. They're not little Englanders. At least most of them aren't. You know, try and understand the British are not inward looking. They just don't want a European superstate. Neither do I, incidentally. And if you're for a European superstate, a few questions for you. Where would the capital be? What would the common language be? You know, these are all reasonable questions. Um, I loathe this. I loathe the uncertainty that this country is facing. And I think Brexit has severely damaged this country's image. I mean, the Brexit process. And I just want the whole damn thing over and done with. Honestly, at this point, as much as I really, really don't want to see a no deal, I'd almost prefer that to prolonged uncertainty. That's how I feel at this point. Thanks for watching.